Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, he ends up crawling on the ceiling. In this week's episode, I'm going to show you how I gave my friend Spider-Man powers using VFX. Hey guys, Cameron here. Welcome back to Cam's Corner. In this week's episode, I'm going to show you how I gave my friend Spider-Man powers using VFX. This is a behind-the-scenes look at a YouTube video on my main channel, Cam's Creations, from a few months back. The video is titled How a Web Slinger Does Chores. So my friend Peter plays a web slinger who uses his Spider-Man powers to do chores around the house. And the challenges were that it was just me and my friend Peter, so a two-man shoot. I had only a week to finish the video. We had no budget. With the tight deadline and the limited resources, it was on me to figure out how to accomplish a bunch of Spider-Man effects just on my computer myself. By the time I made the Web Slinger Chores video, I had already done several other Spider-Man inspired web slinger videos on my channel before, but this time I definitely wanted to up the game and do a few Spider-Man effects that I've never done before. So let's jump right into it. Effect number 1, classic Spider-Man effect, just firing web from a web shooter. For the web shooters, I actually bought some new ones on Amazon, and they are inspired by the new Tom Holland Spider-Man's web shooters. So to create the web shooting out of the web shooter, I used the brush tool in After Effects. So we kind of went pretty old school with this effect. Instead of doing some complicated physics simulations, I just did basically keyframe hand animation. So basically all I had to do was turn on keyframes for that brush tool layer, and then every frame draw a new pattern. Start with the web shooting out a little bit, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then eventually it becomes a straight line. And then in order to make it look more realistic in the real world, we have motion blur. So I added forced motion blur on top of the hand-drawn web. It looks pretty good. This is sort of more inspired by the Amazing Spider-Man web shooters, that there's like a very subtle puff of smoke that comes out while the web shooter fires. So I took some really high quality smoke puffs from actionvfx.com, which is my go-to stock footage website, and I use their stuff in pretty much all of my videos. And there you have a simple web shooter effect. Effect number 2 is a web clothing rack. One of the ideas was that Peter was going to fire a web that creates this clothesline that he ends up hanging his clothes on so that they can air dry. Few steps that I did to sort of make the effect as good as I could. First one, when we were filming the footage, I had Peter flick nothing with the intent that I was going to add the web clothesline in the empty space. When he flicks it in VFX, I would match that the web would wobble a little bit to match his flick. Visual effects always works better if you can sort of tie it into a real world interaction. To actually hang the clothes, I actually had a real rope and had 2 C-stands right out of frame, and then Peter would hang the clothes on the hangers onto the rope. Then what I needed to do was paint out the black rope and replace it with the fake web rope. After Effects has a plugin for wire removal. I used the wire removal tool to paint out the black rope that I had. So when I was filming, I made sure to get a blank plate to place behind where the rope would be. Then I added the web element, so I found a high-res photo of a long piece of web, placed it where the rope was, and then used a puppet tool to match it up to where the black rope was, and then also keyframe animated the puppet tool little joints. So then it looks like Peter is hanging clothes onto web. So number 3, this is my favorite new effect that I've tried, and I haven't done it before, so I was a little nervous going in. This one was inspired directly by the shot from Spider-Man No Way Home, where Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man jumps and touches the ceiling, and then he ends up crawling on the ceiling. So that's the shot that I was trying to recreate in this video. In my head, I had a couple ideas of how to achieve it, and eventually I think we went with the route that worked pretty well. There's a couple plates we had to get. The first shot, I know that we need a shot of just my friend Peter standing on the ground and then jumping and touching the ceiling. Then the second plate, get the blank plate just in case we need it to fill in any stuff we need to fill in the background. Third plate is the green screen plate. So for this one, we didn't have a green screen studio. Basically, I had like a giant sheet of green screen. We just laid it and covered the ground and the couch behind Peter. And then we had Peter do a one-handed handstand, sort of matching the angle in which he touched the ceiling, but just reversed. Peter is a very physically talented actor, so he had no issue doing this. But then in VFX, I flipped the green screen plate upside down, key out the green, so it's just Peter. There was a little little bit of rotoscoping I had to do because the green screen wasn't fully clean. I matched the position of when Peter's hand touches the ceiling in the original plate, and then we match up to the green screen where he is doing the handstand one-handed. Maybe a couple frames of blurring and blending, and you combine the shots and it looks like Peter jumped up and now he's on the ceiling. Because we shot in the exact same location, the lighting mostly matched, and the window is roughly about the same height from the ceiling than from the floor, so the lighting like wasn't noticeably different if he was on the ceiling. So I made sure to add a shadow. So there's a plugin in After Effects that I use that basically creates sort of a custom 2D fake shadow for the character, and I think it isn't perfect, but it worked well enough for my needs. The next shot was actually a fully practical shot of Peter crawling on the ceiling. That shot, we actually just had a blank white wall, and then Peter was crawling on a vertical wall instead of a ceiling, but then I rotated the camera at 90 degrees on the tripod. So that was done practically, so we didn't have to do any visual effects for that. The next one, a classic Spider-Man shot where he is holding onto a web and lands onto the ground from a really high spot. The stretch of the web cushions his fall a little bit, and then he runs up and then shoots a web and then swings away. For what we filmed, we had really just two plates. One plate is of just Peter standing in his starting position, jump up and then land, and then pretend to throw the trash into the trash can, then run away, shoot, and then jump. And then obviously like he doesn't actually fly away in real life, so he lands and then runs out of frame real quick. And then once he runs out of frame, I get the blank plate so that we can use that to paint out when we need Peter to remove from the shot. For this one, we weren't gonna like do a full CG double of Peter because that would be too expensive and too time consuming. So we did a 2D cutout double of Peter. At the beginning of the shot, when Peter jumps up, in the mid jump at the highest point, I freeze frame, cut him out, rotoscope him out, but fortunately it's just one frame. Then use the puppet tool in After Effects to sort of pinpoint his joints and a 2D skeleton of him. And then we keyframe animate him to start from out of frame into frame. And then at some point, it goes from the 2D cutout puppet tool version of Peter into the real shot that we got. The reason why we do the puppet tool is because we want there to be more movement as he's falling in. We don't want it to look like a still frame. We want it to look like it's a real person sort of flopping around a little bit. And then once you add some motion blur, it looks pretty good for a YouTube video. And then a similar idea is used for when he leaves the frame. So have Peter run, shoot, and then jump up. Once Peter jumps at the highest point, freeze frame, cut him out, 2D double of Peter now, add the joints using puppet tool, animate the joints, and then keyframe animate him flying out of frame. Before he flies out of frame, I used an easy ease out on the keyframe because I wanted there to be acceleration over time as he flies out, because I feel like that looked physics-wise more accurate. Once again, the shooting of the web, we go back to the first web shooter effect that I told you about, where I keyframe hand drew with the brush tool the web, and then when he grabs it, I just kept hand drawing frame by frame. Then once you add motion blur, it looks pretty good. Number 5, this is an effect that I was pretty happy about and I hadn't really done before. This one is Peter hanging upside down outside of a window and cleaning the window. As you probably could have guessed, we shot it against green screen. Another trick that we did was to film his upper body and lower body separately. We basically had Peter just held onto two things and his legs were suspended, so we got a plate of that. Then we got an upper body plate where Peter can just relax and his legs didn't need to be hanging anywhere. And then in VFX, we combined the two. And then once we combined the two shots, we matched the color as close as possible. And next one is the slingshot effect. Essentially, it's not too different from the clothesline effect. There's an element of a long piece of web that I could add, and then adding a bunch of puppet tool little joints that I can individually keyframe animate. We kept it simple by keeping, like in the medium shots, we'll have Peter throw the trash over the slingshot, and then in the wide, we cut to basically Peter just miming the action. The plate, there's no trash bags, there's no web in it, just Peter pretending to be holding onto the trash bag, and then pulling back, and then launching it, and then sort of reacting to the aftermath. I watched some reference footage of what slingshots looked like when they fired. Obviously, there was no physics simulation on this. It was just hand keyframe animated to match the physics as close as I could. In terms of the plates, we just really needed plates of the garbage bags. I had Peter hold up the trash bags in the same lighting condition, in the same location, and then basically I freeze frame, 2D cut out the trash bag, and then keyframe animate the position of it and rotation of it to match the slingshot animation. And also I turned it into a 3D object so that it could actually move through 3D space. That is it for all the VFX. Just simple After Effects tools, nothing super complicated. Actually, let me just touch on this one last thing using, this is not VFX, but actually the sound design to really make the visual effects blend with the live action footage. Sound plays such a big role. Adding little tension sounds and friction sounds of like balloons being squished, rubber bands being pulled, like that really helps bring everything together. Yeah, hopefully you learned something from watching this video. Let me know what other effects from my YouTube videos you would like to see me break down. I hope this inspires you to go make something of your own, because like this was two guys with no money making something on YouTube, and it entertained like a lot of people on the internet. So hopefully whatever creative project you have in mind, don't be discouraged by like whatever roadblocks you might face. Go do it. Don't worry about not having the resources you need to make the coolest thing. One day you will, but in the meantime, use whatever resources you have at your disposal and just go and create and make stuff. Thanks for watching, and thanks for visiting Cam's Corner, and I'll see you soon with a new video.